Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and welcome to this edition of Revealing Prophecy. Each week we connect the dots of the news from around the globe with biblical prophecy and talk about what was, what is, and what is to come. The monologue is our original work, and all other articles are used giving credit to their respective resources. We invite you to visit ignitinganation.com for a full roster of our daily interviews, and we encourage you to sign up for our newsletter and YouTube channel so you never have to miss out on any special offerings or events. Here's a quick look at what we'll be covering on today's show. I'll be giving you my opening monologue, followed by a story. Iran says they're not calling for the disappearance of the Jews, just for destruction of the Jewish state. Ayatollah Khomeini cynically claims. Our next story, by striking in Syria, Israel sends a clear message to Iran that it will not be deterred, contributed by the JNS. Next story from Carolyn Glick, Pompeo's statement on settlement is a diplomatic turning point. And our final story by John Lassatte is entitled Lukewarm. As we look at this idea and concept of biblical prophecy, the Bible is a book that if found in the library would be found under prophecy. The reason is there's about 2,500 prophecies in the Bible, of which around 2,000 have been fulfilled. Well, given that the Bible proves so reliable a document, there's every reason to expect that the remaining 500 prophecies, those slated for the time of the end, also will be fulfilled to the last letter. Who can afford to ignore these coming events, much less miss out on the immeasurable blessings offered to anyone and everyone who submits to the control of the Bible's author, God Himself? Would a reasonable person take lightly God's warning of judgment for those who reject what they know to be true about Jesus and the Bible, or who reject Jesus' claim on their lives? My opening monologue. Several days ago, I had the opportunity to shut off all the noise and chatter in my life and just think. For some, that seems to be no big deal, but when you receive hundreds of emails and text messages every day, along with 20 to 40 book pitches for interviews, and you host 3 one-hour per day live TV segments, teach live 2 nights every week and every Sunday, this is a luxury and a precious moment that is worthy of comment. What took me by surprise was what I began to ponder. After college, I taught kindergarten for a very short time, and in 1973 knew I was not cut out to deal with 5- and 6-year-olds. I received an opportunity to move to New York City and take a job as the Wrangler Jeans showroom salesman on the 9th floor of the Empire State Building. I was just 21 years old and had landed a job where I lived on Park Avenue, got tickets to any show in town, had an expense account, and could walk to work. My first day, I met with my new boss, Colonel Walt Hall. Yes, Colonel, as I was required to call him, even though he was a retired Marine Corps colonel. I began to think about some of the early lessons he taught me in regards to dealing with people. And when I added that sage advice to that I received over the next 46 years, plus what my mother taught me, I began to see that manners really do matter. So as one would expect, I posted 10 on my Facebook page to share in hopes that it would encourage and speak to some who may either not have the same teaching that I had, or had it and had forgotten to apply it to today. Between the likes, the comments, and the shares, it seems that many people have forgotten that manners matter. So consider this monologue as a reminder of the 10 that I highlighted. The first was in regards to responding to other people who reach out to you by phone, text, or email. I was always taught that it was good manners to return the call, or in some way acknowledge that although you might not have the information they were looking for, that you would get back with them by a certain time. This was good manners. Even if it was not critical, it was the person that mattered more than the issue. So you were acknowledging the value of the person and not the weight of the matter. Clearly, a strong application of Paul's admonition to esteem the other more than yourself. Those who deal with me personally and professionally know that I respond to every email, text, or call in a very timely manner. Everyone matters, and that is not always easy, but if as a believer I do not respond in a timely way, what message am I sending? Even more, what message am I sending the person who I do not respond to at all? We were all busy, but as important as we may think we are all image bearers of the Creator and deserve to be acknowledged. Even when I am too busy, that's actually my response. And in a very polite way, I convey that it may take me a day or two to respond in full, but I want to be certain that they did not think that I was ignoring them. If you've ever been on the non-response end, you know how that makes you feel. It's that feeling of being less than, and no one likes that feeling. Good manners, lesson number 1, respond in a timely manner or have an auto response, but do not ignore other people. The second is rarely put into practice. We were all raised or at some point in time taught it is polite to say please and thank you. But I've found that people will thank you only if you do or provide what they've requested. What about when the answer is no? Am I required to thank someone for saying no to me? As I pondered this, I began to realize that a certain amount of consideration was invested on the part of the other person as they made their decision. If I do not thank them for their consideration, even if it's in the negative, what message am I sending them? Am I saying your time only matters if you agree with me, but if you disagree with me, your time is not as valuable and therefore should not be acknowledged? That certainly does not foster an edifying relationship, and you should not be surprised if there is no ongoing relationship. But what if you said, I appreciate your position and your consideration and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you for your time. Is this not in some way being a minister of reconciliation and an ambassador of the gospel, or must the name Jesus be a part of the narrative to make it biblical? Manners matter, and so do other people's time. The third point I made was, do not burn any bridges, as you may have just destroyed your escape route. I have heard and seen way too many people react to a situation and burn a bridge by saying something in the moment that closes the door forever. That bridge is not stained with the blood of Messiah, but of the parties involved in the dispute. Just because someone does not agree with you is not proof that they are wrong. As we mature in the Lord, there are many things we wish we had not said to another. Since none of us know the future, imagine the possibility that the day might come when you might run into that person or your lives cross paths and you may have matured in the Lord, but the wound in them is too much and your escape route has become scorched earth. Let us be reminded of Paul's admonition in Ephesians 4:29. Let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building up the one in need and bringing grace to those who listen. Manners must not be just in the moment, but in the long run. My Hungarian father started out at 18 years old as a stock boy at Macy's in New York City and remained with that organization for the next 47 years when he retired as an executive vice president. He taught me everyone matters, from the custodian to the president. I'm reminded that we ought not think too highly of ourselves, as we were all once just dirt. Your witness is on display, and how you treat each person, from the least to the greatest, is how you will be remembered. The one you spoke down to 20 years ago may just be your new boss one day, and even if they are not, they are still created by the same Creator and in the same image of God that you and I are. Therefore, they deserve just as much love, grace, and respect as you would like to receive. Manners matter. The next one is just plain and simple. If you're too busy to say thank you, you are too busy. Along the way, I've known great success and great failure. I have sat at the foot of a bed of many a person in need of prayer, and when they were up and on their feet, they were too busy to say thank you. It wasn't just me, it was the staff and all those that helped them, and they were too busy to say thank you. So to make sure that none of those people felt insignificant, I made a point to cover for that person and went to everyone on the staff and extended that person's thanks for their help in saving that person's life. It didn't take long at all, and a simple thank you can just make someone's day. If you're too busy or think you're too important to say thank you, then you're just plain too busy. Manners matter. The next one is straight out of Scripture, but at the time it was taught to me, the Bible was not a part of the picture. My coach told me to rejoice in others' victory and never celebrate my enemy's defeat. King Solomon wrote in Proverbs 24:17, "Do not gloat when your enemy falls. When they stumble, do not let your heart rejoice." The teaching is the same, and good sportsmanship, especially in these highly competitive times we live in, makes for good relationships because manners matter. The next one hit close to home for me in the corporate world as I climbed the corporate ladder. You didn't get where you are on your own. Don't forget who helped you and give them some credit. Giving another a compliment costs you nothing, but is more precious than gold to those you acknowledge. I would be nowhere if it wasn't for the support of faithful friends here and in Israel. They are the ones who celebrated every victory and stood by and held me as I shook with tears at the betrayal I was facing. Their loyalty and support added to the support of an entire new world of friends and ministry partners who have helped launch us into areas we could have never gotten on our own. You didn't get where you are on your own. Don't forget who helped you and give them some credit. Honor others for their contribution and take no credit for yourself. Do not, Matthew says, in Matthew 16, Jesus says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal." Manners matter, and where your treasure is, so will your heart be. Number 8 seems so simple, and so many miss the opportunity to make someone's day with a simple act of recognition. If someone has a name tag, use their name. It makes them feel like they matter. All throughout the Bible, you read of someone introducing themselves by saying, "I am," and then stating their name. Their name means something to them, and they are identified by their name. If someone is wearing a name tag, make it personal each and every time you see them, and you just might find them confiding in you and giving you an opportunity to share with them. Manners matter and can open shut doors. And the final one is just sage advice given by God in the 5th commandment and the practical lessons taught to you, and that is, don't forget the lessons Mom taught you. They will last you a lifetime. You see, our moms are not with us, or may not be with us, for all our lives, and we honor them by remembering the lessons they taught us. The bottom line is, manners matter, and your witness is being watched by people you have no idea that they're watching or listening. As an ambassador of heaven, how you treat others is a reflection of your relationship with God. In almost all of Jesus' messages and Paul's messages, the summation of their words are essentially, manners matter. And that, my friend, is today's monologue through the eyes of this old rabbi. Now on to today's stories. Iran not calling for disappearance of Jews, just for destruction of the Jewish state, Khomeini cynically claims. This was contributed by the United with Israel staff. We cannot help but roll our eyes when Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei claims that the disappearance of Israel does not mean the destruction of the Jewish people. Calling for the elimination of the state of Israel does not mean the elimination of the Jewish people. It means that the people of Palestine, be they Muslim, Christian, or Jewish, should choose their own government, Khamenei said in a speech on Friday at the International Conference on Islamic Unity in Tehran, Reuters reported. Indeed, his claim that he is not prejudicing against Jews is similar to that of the promoters of the anti-Israel boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, BDS, which has been shown to be anti-Semitic. In June 2016, 31 countries voted to adopt a new working definition of anti-Semitism that includes anti-Zionism, a move hailed by human rights activists as an important milestone in countering hatred. The definition notes that criticism of Israel, similar to that leveled against any other country, cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. But accusations of due loyalty and the use of double standards against the Jewish state, as well as tenets of anti-Zionism, like the denial of Jewish rights to self-determination, are considered manifestations of anti-Semitism. French President Emmanuel Macron, for example, was among many world leaders who recognized this phenomena. At a ceremony marking the 75th anniversary of the Nazi deportation of Jews from Paris in 2017, he vowed, "We will not surrender to anti-Zionism because it is a reinvention of anti-Semitism." Khomeini's statement on Friday was not the first time he claimed he was not anti-Semitic, but merely intent on destroying the Zionist regime. For instance, in the summer of 2015, the New York Post reported on the publication of a book he had authored called Palestine, consisting of 416 pages that outline a plan to wipe out the Jewish state. Khomeini insisted that his strategy for the destruction of Israel is not based on anti-Semitism, which he described as a European phenomenon. Khomeini's murderous actions speak louder than his words, as Iran financially and militarily backs terror groups Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Hezbollah. Thousands of Jewish Israelis have been murdered in cold blood by these Iranian proxies. Our next story, brought to us by JNS, by striking in Syria, Israel sends a clear message to Iran that it will not be deterred. Israel launched a broad wave of precision airstrikes early on Wednesday morning, hitting dozens of Iranian and Syrian military targets, and sending a very strong message that Israel is rejecting Iran's attempt to force new rules of the game against it. Most of the Iranian military targets that were hit were situated within Syrian military bases, underlying the Iranian tactic of embedding and disguising its threatening presence within the Syrian Arab army. According to international media reports, 23 people, including 16 foreigners, and apparent reference to Iranian operatives, were killed in the strikes. The Israeli action came in response to an Iranian-directed rocket attack on Tuesday morning, in which projectiles were launched from the Damascus area in the direction of Israel. An Israeli Iron Dome battery intercepted the 4 rockets, which set off warning sirens in northern Israeli communities. That rocket attack could be linked to a reported Israeli strike on a key Iranian military installation in the Damascus area this week, though Israel has not commented on such reports. Iran is continuing its efforts to build a war machine in Syria and entrench itself militarily by moving weapons, military forces, militias, and building missile bases on the territory controlled by the Bashar Assad regime. The goal of Iran is to build a second Hezbollah in Syria and to move its own military capabilities into the area so that it can threaten Israel from multiple fronts. Israel has been pursuing an active campaign of removing these threats as it detects them, taking the initiative and relying on high-quality intelligence and precision firepower to deal with the ongoing Iranian challenge from Syria. The goal is to nip the threat in the bud and not wait until it takes on monstrous proportions as Hezbollah's rocket and missile arsenal has become in Lebanon. The Quds forces, Iran's Overseas Special Operations Unit, is in charge of the Iranian expansion program in Syria. Its commander, General Qassem Soleimani, has attempted to enforce new rules on Israel, according to which any Israeli preemptive strike will result in Iranian retaliation. This Iranian equation is essentially designed to deter Israel from taking the initiative and removing threats to its security preemptively. Iran wants to impose a price tag on Jerusalem for the active defense campaign that Israel has been pursuing with much success. Hundreds of Israeli airstrikes in recent years have prevented the Iranians from achieving most of their goals in Syria, leading to frustration in Tehran, though its confidence has been rising recently. The successful Iranian cruise missile and drone attack on Saudi state-oiled oil fields on September 14th were a display of highly advanced long-range firepower. The Iranian attack was a threat directed at Israel as much as it was to Iran's other regional arch foe, Saudi Arabia. Israel heard the message and sent one of its own on Tuesday, rejecting Iran's attempt to deter it from taking action in the region to defend itself. It appears as if Iranians absorbed a painful blow in Syria, just as they did in the May 2018 during Operation House of Cards, when Israel struck a series of Iranian targets in response to an Iranian truck-mounted rocket attack. Iran now has three options going forward. It can choose not to respond, launch a minor response, or order a more significant response. The fact that the regime is under pressure at home due to domestic unrest, that its economy is bleeding due to biting American sanctions, and that it's facing unrest in other zones of influence like Lebanon and Iraq means that Iranian decision-making may become more unpredictable going forward. Speaking to reporters on Wednesday after the strike, IDF spokesperson Brigadier General Hadi Zimmerman stressed that the IDF still has the initiative. We will not allow Iran to entrench itself in Syria, he said. We prepared a battle procedure that included deployment of air defense and attack preparations. The wave of strikes was broad in its targets. According to an IDF statement, dozens of targets were struck in the Damascus area, south and west of Syria's capital, and on the Syrian Golan Heights near the Israeli border. In addition, the Israeli Air Force destroyed Syrian surface-to-air missile batteries that are considered advanced after they fired at Israeli aircraft. Syrian weapons storage facilities, military headquarters, and observation posts were also destroyed by Israeli aircraft. When it came to Iranian assets, the IAF demolished Iranian military buildings, a headquarters situated in Damascus International Airport, and an observation post on the Golan Heights. We acted against the Syrian host and the Iranian guest, said Zimmerman. Outlining Israel's posture, he assured that we are prepared for defense and offense, and we will act with severity against any attempt to respond. We're prepared for any scenario. We will not accept Iranian entrenchment. This is a red line. It also appears as if the Assad regime keeps failing to heed Israel's warning to refrain from joining the Iranian-Israeli showdown, and Syria's decision to fire surface-to-air missiles resulted in a loss of a number of its air defense batteries. Referring to Tuesday's rocket attack on Israeli Golan, the IDF stated yesterday's Iranian attack towards Israel is further clear proof of the purpose of the Iranian entrenchment in Syria, which threatens Israeli security, regional stability, and the Syrian regime. Furthermore, the IDF holds the Syrian regime responsible for actions taken in its territory and warns it from operating or allowing hostilities against Israel. Such actions will be followed by a severe response. The IDF will continue operating firmly and resolutely against the Iranian entrenchment in Syria. Israel has heard Iran's message and sent its reply. The ball now returns to Iran's court. Our next story is Secretary of State Pompeo's statement on settlements is a diplomatic turning point, contributed by Caroline Glick. Monday will long be remembered as a turning point in Middle East history. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's statement Monday that Israeli settlements are not illegal per se is the most significant shift in U.S. Middle East policy in the past generation. Jerusalem's status as Israel's capital has been a matter of U.S. law since 1996. There was little interest in Washington in recent years in pressuring Israel to withdraw from the Golan Heights. But the issue of the legality of Israeli settlements has been the defining issue of much of the international discourse on Israel for an entire generation. In the vast majority of cases, the discourse has revolved around the widely held allegation, with no basis in actual law, that Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria are illegal. This allegation has served as the justification for a continuous barrage of condemnations of Israel in international arena and for anti-Israel legal verdicts in international courts, including the International Court of Justice at The Hague in 2004 and the European Court of Justice last week. The unsupported allegation that Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria are illegal was also the basis for the UN Security Council Resolution 2234 from 2016 and as a basis of the International Criminal Court's ongoing probe of Israelis. Pompeo made two revolutionary assertions in his statement. First, he said that after carefully studying all sides of the legal debate, like the Reagan administration before it, the Trump administration has concluded the establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not per se inconsistent with international law. Second, Pompeo noted the near ubiquitousness of the false assertion that settlements are illegal has not advanced the prospect for peace. To the contrary, it has harmed the chances of getting to peace. In his words, calling the establishment of civilian settlements inconsistent with international law has not advanced the cause of peace. And of course, it hasn't. Placing a lie in the center of the discourse on the Palestinian conflict with Israel is no way to promote understanding and coexistence. In the interest of promoting peace, Pompeo instead told the truth. Not only are Israeli settlements not illegal, Pompeo noted that they are arguably more justified than civilian settlements built in other disputed territories. In his words, the administration's determination is based on the unique facts, history, and circumstances presented by the establishment of civilian settlements in the West Bank. That is, it's based on the historic ties of the Jewish people to Judea and Samaria. These ties lay at the heart of Jewish history and religion. Finally, Pompeo said that the legal status of the settlements is itself irrelevant to prospects for peace. As he put it, there will never be a judicial resolution to the conflict, and arguments about who is right and who is wrong as a matter of international law will not bring peace. This is a complex political problem that can only be solved by negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians. Pompeo's statement, and indeed the Trump administration's decision to publish its position, now represents a complete rebuke of the European Union. The EU has made its false determination that Israeli settlements in Judea and Samaria are illegal, the basis for its hostile, discriminatory economic and political policies toward Israel. The European Court of Justice verdict last week, which requires EU member states to place distinct labels on Jewish-made exports from Judea, Samaria, United Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights, is self-evidently a bid to use a deliberate misinterpretation of international law to implement an anti-Semitic policy. Israel's own foreign minister should take a lesson from the Trump administration. After a bitter 2-year bureaucratic and political fight, in 2017, Israeli embassies worldwide published a paper that explained the legal validity of Israel's settlements in Judea and Samaria. But unlike the Trump administration, the Israeli government has still not stated outright that international law is irrelevant to the cause of peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Pompeo's statement is first and foremost an extraordinary gesture of support for Israel and the rights of the Jewish people on the part of President Donald Trump and his administration. But from a U.S. perspective, it also represents a key advance in Trump's realistic foreign policy. Since taking office, Trump has worked consistently to align U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East and beyond to the world as it is, rather than to the world as experts imagine it to be. In the Middle East, this realignment of U.S. policy has provided the nations of the region, including Israel and the Palestinians, with the first chance of reaching genuine peace they've ever had. Our next story, entitled Lukewarm, written by John Lassatte. There are two misconceptions that Satan puts on the world. One is that heaven is available to unbelievers that live good lives. The second is that hell is only reserved for the worst of the worst. So the people of the world feel comfortable with their generalized belief in heaven and hell. How sad. Even when faced with the truth of the Bible and the need for salvation and Messiah, they still believe the lies of Satan. I see that there are three types of people. The first is those living for themselves, believing the lies of Satan. The second is the lukewarm believer, and the third is the true believer. The first is the easiest to see. These people are selflessly living their lives for themselves without accepting Messiah. The second are those who have 1 foot with Messiah and 1 foot in the world, wanting the benefits of both living for self and for Messiah. The The last, the true believers, are living each day for God, not themselves, and are heaven-focused. It's been all three in the order listed above. I've lived for myself and myself only. I accepted Messiah but had one foot in the world, living a lie to myself. And now I do my best to live for Messiah each day with serving Him and being heaven-focused. I want to focus on those that are lukewarm in their relationship with Messiah. Being hot or cold is pretty easy to discern in ourselves, but being lukewarm can be a challenge. Regardless of what you may think, or if you disagree with me, I believe that each person falls into one of the categories I listed above. I want people to know that if they live in the world or are lukewarm, change is possible. What is important is that if you are living lukewarm, you can be all in for Messiah. Colossians 3:2 tells us to set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. We need to focus on the things above, God, and not this world. We can do this by keeping our eyes on God and not man or the things of man. When we have Messiah in our hearts, our eyes will be on Him and not the things of the world. This has to be constant, not just when we feel like it. It doesn't take that much effort, but really, it just takes a change of heart. Matthew 6:21 tells us that where our treasure is where our hearts are. The question to ask yourself is, what is your treasure? If you want your treasure to be Jesus, then work for that each day. Don't give up on yourself. The Holy Spirit will lead you and convict you to do this if this is what you really want. Don't lie to yourself, though. Examine your heart to see where it is. Psalm 139:23 and 24 tells us, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." Conduct a thorough exam of your heart, and if there's something in there that needs to be cut out, pray for this to happen. Psalm 51:10 says, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." Only with a clean heart and a renewing of our spirit can we fully seek Messiah's marvelous grace and power in our lives. We need to have our right hearts to live fully for Messiah. Anything less is questionable. We can't love and hate at the same time. We can't love parts of the world and love Messiah at the same time. We need to turn our backs to the world and turn our faces to Messiah. If we don't, we are falling short. We can't be lukewarm believers. Revelation 3:16 says, "So then, because thou art lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth." This statement is very clear and concise. If you are lukewarm, be wary of what you are doing and change now, not tomorrow or when you are older or down the road sometime. Do it now. I use this verse to remind myself of the importance of not being lukewarm in my faith. Have I? Yes. Do I? Still? Sometimes. But when I catch myself being lukewarm, I quickly repent and refocus my mind to Him. To me, it's a heart thing. If my heart is set on things above, how can they be muddled by the things of the world? They can't. It takes a conscious effort to put the things above to the side to satisfy the lust of the flesh. Satan wants us to think it's okay to be lukewarm. He wants us to believe we can have the best of both worlds. We can't, though. We need to choose one or the other, and this takes an honest appraisal of ourselves. Don't believe Satan lies. Don't get tripped up by lukewarm messages at church or lukewarm justifications from others. Open your Bible and see for yourself what it says about being righteous and doing the will of God. Being lukewarm in our faith is believing the lies of Satan. If you are just floating through life with faith in one hand and serving self in the other, it's wrong. 1 John 3:10 tells us, "In this the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever doeth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth not his brother." Okay, so what is righteousness? If you're unsure, it's living justly and doing the will of God. What is the will of God? John 6:40 sums it up this way, "And this is the will of him that sent me, that every one which seeth the Son and believeth on him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last day." And if you believe in Yeshua, you will need to follow him and follow his example in life. 1 Corinthians 11:1. Here's a few examples of what following Yeshua means. Matthew 16:24. Then said Yeshua unto his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. He said in John 13:35, By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. Galatians 2:20, I am crucified with Messiah. Nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Messiah lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. A lukewarm believer does not practice righteousness and is not doing the will of the Father. A lukewarm believer is trying to live in the world and with Messiah at the same time. Eternity is not something to mess with or take lightly. And when living a lukewarm life, this is exactly what's happening. Being all in for Messiah is how we should live. From our waking moments until we go to bed for the night, our thoughts need to be on Him, not self or in between. This can take effort at first if you haven't been practicing this, but with a little self-discipline, it will happen. It takes every moment of your day having Messiah in the forefront of your mind. It takes keeping Him in the background of your thoughts. After a while, it becomes natural to do this. It becomes a habit. Brothers and sisters, search your heart of hearts for your standing with being lukewarm. Let the word reach into your innermost parts to show you where you are. If you are lukewarm, change and change now, for we don't know when Messiah will take us home. And that, my friends, is this week's edition of Revealing Prophecy. This program, along with Revealing the Bible, are only available after they air through the Biblical Truth Library. I want to encourage you to visit ignitinganation.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter and check out the Biblical Truth Library. Follow us online through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can catch up on over 1,400 interviews and never miss out on any of our great guests. Your comments and questions are always welcome, and we may include your answer in the next edition of the newsletter. Don't forget our regular live broadcasts are Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. Until we see you right back here tomorrow for the next edition of Revealing the Truth, we thank you for watching and bid you Shalom.